My name is Ray Singletary. I've been in education for about 23 years. And just a little context about me. I like to share this about me just personally before you get into the education side. But I kind of believe in three different things. I believe in belief, access, and community.
Mm.
And they kind of drive what I do every day. So for me, belief is if you think you can, then you can. If you don't, then you probably won't. Access meaning what kind of tools and resources do you need to be successful, and how can we provide those for you? And then community is how do we work together to get this hard work done? And so no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm been a teacher of mathematics, that's kind of how I started, to being a dean, to being a department chair, working at district level, principal, and now working in HR, recruiting people. That's kind of how I've kind of gone through my values, and even also in my side little things going on, which is the educator career coach and supporting people with their resume and interview. Those are things that I believe, and so that's kind of how I drive my day, my work, and how I work with people.
Awesome. Where did you come up with that philosophy?
Well, I definitely came up with it, right? Because it was something that wasn't something that I had originally when I got into education. I definitely had to learn it from other people, whether it is reading books about what education was in the past and what it is now, being inspired by others like yourself that I find on TikTok or in other spaces that really talk about what it's like to deal with people. And for me, education is a people business. I know we
Ooh.
teach content, and sometimes I hear people say, I go into it to teach the content. And I thought that too when I first got started, right? Like I want to teach math, but really you're teaching humans and the dynamics of working with people, and just having that continuous belief, finding tools to help you get better at it and being a continuous learner through your community. I think it's kind of where that came from.
Yeah. So when you say working in education is a people job, what's funny is this morning I have a clip and I haven't posted yet. And I'm gonna
Hmm.
post it right after this conversation. But I have this clip that I made about if I had to give one tip to any future educator, it was that when you have to understand that working in education, you're working with people. It's a people job.
Hmm.
And you should only do the things that work well with people, like loving people and caring for people and being respectful, and being flexible and doing all the things that work well when you work with people. And all the things that don't work with people, like being selfish and greedy and gossiping, that goes out the door. That
Yes.
shouldn't be at the job if you're trying to be successful in education. And it's funny that you say that because I totally believe it. Establishing those relationships with everybody on the campus, with the kids, with the teachers, with the custodial staff, with the cafeteria workers, with the bus drivers,
Hmm.
with everybody. And if you could do that, right, then you will be successful on your campus. And it doesn't even take that much. It's like, good morning, say good morning, smile,
Yeah.
welcome people, don't worry. So don't like be calm, be inviting, be
Right.
understanding. Like this is not even hard stuff, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it it's interesting you say that because it sounds so basic, and we talk about relationships. It's relationships is one of those words for me personally that I I I know it's important, but I struggle with it because we say it so often in education that for me personally, we say it so often in education, you might disagree with this, but that we don't necessarily teach people how to build relationships
Yeah.
with somebody that you might not get along with. Like
Yeah.
it's easy to build a relationship with somebody that sees the world the same and comes from similar experiences and wants the same kind of goals, right? But how do you work with somebody that doesn't have those same things and doesn't want the same thing as you, right?
Mhm.
How do you build that common understanding and that common um, relationship, whatever that may be. It might be a different relationship than you have with that person that has the same goals, but it can be a strong foundational relationship. And I think it's those small things, like you said, just saying
Yeah.
hello, being willing to listen to their story, asking them about themselves, right? And just taking a moment to be present with somebody is can change the way they see you and the way they approach you each and every day.
Yeah. You have to understand where they're coming from. Starts with acceptance and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Just you gotta accept the person for who they are and what they stand for and what they believe, and you try to understand them, and you go about your business, and but you accept people like this. I know this, like if I were a teacher at some place, I'd be like, okay, I know this teacher is like this way.
Mm-hmm.
That's who they are. That's who they are, and that's where they are right now. I know this teacher is this way, and you just accept them, and you try to understand them. And I think that that's like the basis:
Yeah.
acceptance and understanding. And they're probably doing the same thing with me, like, oh, I know Mr. Vergara, this is how he is, and whatever, and if we all could just accept each other, if we could all just accept each other, the world's problems would be solved.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you talk about too, right? Like when you talk about this being, it's simple things to do. Like you said, the biblical kind of love,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And just, I love when you say that because that is how we want to be, right? And I think personally, there's things that get in the way of those things. And I think one of those things is speed, right? Education is about being in a hurry and you
Speed.
got to do things fast
Yeah.
and you got to be in a rush. And when you're in a rush, you can't be present at the same time because
Hmm.
you're too busy trying to go somewhere else,
Hmm.
right? So you can't be with that person. And so, um, one of the things I think is important is if I'm in a rush, and I had to learn this as an administrator personally, if I was running down the hall trying to get somewhere and somebody was asking me a question, how can I just acknowledge them and say, hey, I would love to talk to you. I have this right now, but I'm going to come back and we're going to have a conversation about what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Just so they know that I cared enough to say, I'm not ignoring you. I'm going to come back, but I want to give you the space and my full attention so I can really understand what you're going through right now.
I have to be like cognitive about like speed, about speed. I rush. I could rush. I could start walking fast, and I have to catch myself. I'm like, slow down,
Mm-hmm.
breathe, breathe, slow down, slow down. There's people around you. Acknowledge them. Acknowledge. These are thoughts that go through my head. I'm not kidding here. I'm passing through the office. I'm like, slow down, say good morning, say
Yeah,
hi. Like because as an administrator, you get to work, and it's just like brrr, like all the things that are coming. Like, okay, I got to call this parent. I got to make sure that this is covered. I got to submit this, and it's like brrr. And
mm-hmm.
then there might be somebody that bought donuts for the office, and they're like, oh, hey, Mr. Vergara, I got donuts for the office. But my mind is like all these other things, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not thinking about no donuts. And
Right,
it's like be human. Oh,
right.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for the donuts. Thank you for bringing donuts for the office. And
Yeah.
I have to slow down. And what helps me too is like doorways. Doorways help me out. So when you pass through a doorway, it's like a trigger almost. Like I pass through a
Mm-hmm.
doorway, how am I feeling? Every time I enter a room, how am I feeling? What kind of presence am I bringing into this classroom? So if I'm walking to a
Mm-hmm.
classroom, I cross a door. What kind of presents are you bringing? And that goes for like my car. When I walk into the car, I open my door, I walk into a door, I'm in this one box. How could I just, you're going home. How do you breathe? Calm down.
Yeah,
Your school's over.
right,
Open the door, walk to my front door. You're walking into kitchen. You're going to see your wife and kids, like slow down.
right,
You're
right.
in a different space. You're working at a different level. Be present there,
Mm-hmm.
and so like doorways are
Yeah,
the key.
I love that. I love that. I might steal that one because what you're talking about is true, right? It's having to me, it's like having these triggers, having these routines in your mind to remind yourself of what you need to do in that moment.
Yeah.
Just taking it moment by moment instead of thinking it way ahead, like, oh, I got all this stuff to do tomorrow. No, I'm right here in the kitchen
Yeah.
with my wife and my family, and I just want to be here right now and enjoy this moment. So I love the doorways. I love it.
That's it. Yeah. So Ray, let's start talking about we're over here having a let's talk about education here. Let's go here. Um, you started education a while back. How did you begin? And why? I want to know why you got into education.
Yeah, it was a mistake. I did
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
I didn't plan to do it at all. Um, Honestly, my mom was in education, and she was a, a a special education assistant, teacher
Hmm.
assistant at the high school, very severe disability students. And she did it for years, and she drove a school bus. And
Hmm.
she had to have both jobs because she
Yeah.
couldn't afford it, right? She had to have two jobs. No, we don't get paid much as educators. Assistants don't get paid.
Yeah.
You get paid even less. And so, I used to help her clean the bus and, get things ready. So I did not want to do it. I was like, I don't want to do that. That's not what I want to do. I wanted to go into computer science. And we couldn't afford for me to go to college. We couldn't afford it.
Hmm.
And I wanted to go to school. And I had a teacher, my English teacher, Miss Falk, at the high school, who came to me one day when I was planning on doing some school visits, and she came to me and said, "I think this scholarship would be a good idea for you." And it was a teaching fellow scholarship, which they had where I was in North Carolina, and it paid for your whole school. But you had to do interviews and go through this rigorous process because it was a program. Like,
Yeah.
you went to school, they paid for you. You had summer experiences to do, you had trips to do, you had conferences to go to during the summers. And so, because of that, I was able to go to school and not have a lot of debt coming out of school.
That's good.
And but I had to teach for 4 years after that.
Yeah.
So I went to math, and that's how I got in it. And I tell you, I was pretty blessed in my start because I started in a school, and I'll never forget it. The department chair there was part of the interview, and she said, and I never forget her. She Miss Cole, she's awesome. She said, "If you don't want to work on a team, you don't work here."
Yeah.
And she was serious.
Yeah.
And it was a team environment. And I know folks don't get that when they get started, but it really helped me to start and get my routines and stuff in order and not have to worry about the content because we spent a lot of time working through that together. And so that's how I got into education.
Right on. And how does that play? Like, did you feel like she made you accountable in the sense of teamwork and you need to hold your own? Because
Yeah,
I know we had
absolutely.
talked about this earlier about support and accountability.
Yeah, and I think that's where that's kind of like foundational for me and something I'm thinking about every day, right? How can I have some accountability for myself, but then also support myself, right? Or others. I don't think you can't have growth without both. You
Yeah.
cannot have growth without both. You can't just have accountability and say, oh, you need to be accountable without the tools to help you get there.
Yeah.
And you can't just have support because it's like a poor me. Oh, I'll give you all this, but you don't really have any goals. I can't really help you get anywhere. So, um, yeah, it was everybody was responsible for a unit. You had to plan it. It come to the team, present it. Everybody got a chance to review it and give you feedback on how to make it better, and it just rotate it. And everybody took the lead. Everybody was part of the team, and it was a high functioning space for me to learn how to be a professional.
It sounds like a high functioning space where everybody had a chance to create a unit and you got feedback. Just getting feedback, being vulnerable and being able to hear like here's my unit and then somebody says, "Well, like this part right here." That's a tough thing to do. How
Yeah,
does she create that space?
I think one of the things I think is important, like just being kind of being on my journey. I think sometimes spaces are created because they're new. And so, because the school, I don't think it was too old, the people that were there kind of built the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't have to really change the culture, which is a different type of leadership kind of work. They kind of built it and said, this is how we're going to operate. And everybody that comes in is going to operate in that way. So I think when you start a new school, that's a way to build that. But I've also been on teams that we built it together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's all about kind of what we value is not being isolated, not feeling alone, not feeling like you have to figure everything out by yourself. And if a parent comes in, it's kind of a collective. This is how we do things,
Yeah.
um, we kind of support each other in that way.
See, like you need everybody on board for something like that. You need like high buy-in, and everybody believes the same things and is working toward the same goal. That's hard to create. That is hard to create, especially if you just kind of get thrown into a school that already has some sort of some sort of environment that has already been created already, and you're just kind of thrown in there, and you're that new teacher, and you're like, uh-oh, like this is not a healthy environment. I can
Yeah.
feel it, I can see it, like what would you suggest to a teacher that's thrown in an unhealthy environment?
Yeah, I think that happens more often than not, just being in different places. I think education is interesting because we want kids to work together, but then sometimes the adults want to be like, I'm an independent contractor.
Mhm.
I don't want anybody coming in my space. And I get it because sometimes it's a lot of criticism that comes with that, right? It's a lot of judgment and feeling like you're not doing a good enough job, which educators get, we get a lot of that. So I understand it, but I think if you're in that space now, what I suggest is find people maybe even outside your space that you can collaborate with, connect to, ask questions of, learn from. I think that that's important, but also within your space, figure out how you can connect, right? How can I, ask questions to say, hey, I'm trying to do this unit. Can you give me some feedback on this part of it, right? And
Mhm.
not talk about the whole thing because people be like, oh, that's a lot. But really take a little small chunk and say, I'm thinking about doing this with my kids. Can we do this together? Just taking moments that we can share in the load because the load is heavy by
That's right.
yourself. And so that brings people together. I think understanding that you don't have to build everything by yourself. And you can go home to your family and really have time to spend to them instead of grading papers and doing all this extra planning because we shared that, right?
Mhm.
I took it on this week. You can take it on next week. So just creating what's the advantage for the other person to collaborate? I
Yeah,
think that's important to think about.
that's good. And so you're a teacher for what? Like you said, 12 years or so, for a
Yeah,
bit.
in the classroom direct. I still think I'm a teacher. I think
Yeah, I
everybody.
still too. Me too. Me too. But for 12 years in the classroom, correct?
Yes, 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 yes.
And then what inspired you to leave the classroom? Why did you leave the classroom?
I think for me personally, I felt like I wanted to push myself.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, I had been in that quality space that I said I talked about, and then I moved to get to where my wife is. I moved to a
Mm-hmm.
different state and and started over there, and the space wasn't the same. And I always thought, how can I be a part of building that for others?
Yeah.
Because it was so good for me to get started with. And it's a struggle to, like you said, to build that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's kind of my inspiration. Like I said, belief at can I do it? Do I think I can? Yes. Can I give them the tools to make it feel good for them because it's going to help them too, not just because I think it's good, because it's going to help you and help kids,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is what you want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then just having it small, bit by bit, building that community. I love this routine that you talked about in one of your other podcasts or one of your clips from TikTok of sharing your weekend, right?
Oh yeah,
Just talking about your weekend with kids and being vulnerable and say, hey, this is what I did, even if nobody says anything, right?
that's right.
But that routine builds community.
Hmm.
And if you can get a group of people together and have these community building, now I'm not talking about like these, what are they called? When you do them at the beginning of the school year, these
It's icebreakers.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about that. I'm talking about like real things to get to know people. Like one thing that I use in some of my different positions was this thing called photo picture says 1,000 words, right? This routine. And we would have everybody take their phone out, pick a picture that made them smile, and then go
That's
find
good.
somebody else to share that with and talk about why they picked that picture.
That's good. Yeah, I love it. You know, that whole idea about sharing your day with your kids. People like I hope like that works so well. That works so, and I used it every single morning when I was a classroom teacher. Every single morning, and it started off where nobody wanted to share at first, and I talked about the silliest thing. I could talk about, hey guys, I went to Target, and I went to go buy dog food for my dog, and I buy this, and I buy this dog food in this purple bag, and it kind of the prices went up, and then I fed my dog. He loves it, and I could talk about anything,
Right.
anything. And then afterward, I came home and we had chili dogs for dinner. You guys like chili dogs? Oh yeah, yeah, I like chili dogs too. And that's what will happen. Like the simplest things, and then somebody will raise their hand and they'll be like, yeah, the ice cream truck came and I got some nachos. I put some jalapenos on that, and the other kid be like, I like to get my hot Cheetos and put cheese in them. That's what oh, you guys, I like that too. And you make these connections, and it's like, man, this is community building right here. We all are in the same neighborhood. We all understand the ice cream truck and Cheetos and cheese and the idea of eating tasty food and being satisfied and smiling on a summer day. You're eating your Cheetos, you're drinking your Coke, and you're like, this is the best. Everybody gets it. Everybody
Yeah.
understands a dog and trying to take care of your dog. And like these are just basic common things that people could all get together and connect. And
Yeah.
if you just did that for 10 minutes every day, your classroom would the community building would be just great, and you get to know people and their families and how many siblings they have, and you don't even have to ask specific questions because they'll share.
Hmm.
I had one person in my comments saying, well, if you start to ask questions, that's a problem. I'm not asking questions. I'm just like, do you want to share? We'll listen. And that's another thing. Kids need to be listened to.
Hmm.
Kids need to be listened to. When do they ever just have a time to just sit and just share anything? And
Yeah.
everybody's quiet. And everybody's sitting back, like just listening and like, oh, okay. That's great practice for the kids. And that builds your self esteem and your self worth. And like, oh, everybody's listening to me. Oh, and then I did this, so that's so important. And
Yeah.
yeah, I was on this I have to clear my admin credential. So I was in this Zoom meeting today,
Hmm.
and they put me in a Zoom breakout room. And one of the questions was like, what is your reason to be an admin, and how do you perform that task or something like that? Like, what's your why basically? And I'm like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I was like, I'm just like positive. I'm positive and I'm a light, because working at a school can be a negative place. There's a lot of things that happen that could bring your spirit down, that could make you feel bad about certain situations. We don't make the most money. We don't have enough supplies. We don't have enough personnel. Things aren't always going right for us. You could just go, the list could go on and on and on. And I'm like, I'm just a positive light. I try to bring people smiles. I try to be uplifting. I try to say that we can do it. I try to
Hmm.
support. I try to care for people, and that's what I do. And I said the reason why I do that is because I understand that schools could be a negative place, and I'm just here to turn on that light.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
my why. Yeah.
I love that.
So yeah,
I love it. It's like simple, but just a one focus, right? If I can focus on one thing every single day and just bring that thing, I'm being successful.
You
It
know,
doesn't
on
have to
one
be all these million things, you know?
on one of your posts, it was an interview question. It was like this guy gave this textbook answer, and you're like, oh, that's just from the textbook. Like, what's give me some more substance or something, basically. When I was in the Zoom meeting, a lot of people I felt were giving textbook answers, like, like I want to, whatever, real textbook answers, and they were reading it, and and great. I'm glad you did all that. Good for you.
Yeah.
But man, that was so textbook, and let's, yeah, it was just too textbook for me, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, you do know. I think you're saying the same thing that you're saying with like why do we not do more of that community building in at the beginning of class? Why don't we do that? Because we're afraid. Like people tell you not to do that.
Hmm.
I mean, I remember being told at the very beginning, like, don't smile until Christmas and stuff like that. Like, come on. You are a human being. You go through emotions, you have things. People want to see the human side of you, not just a robot.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to how you, and I started like a robot, right? I was trying to be too
Hmm.
technical. And I think that turns people off. It makes them think you're perfect and they don't want to come around you or ask you and be authentic with you, right? And so whether it's in the classroom or, in an interview or in your breakout room, how can I be as authentic to who I want to be, who I'm trying to be
Hmm.
every single day with every single person I meet? And, I think that shifted for me. And you asked me why I kind of wanted to go to the next level is how can I create those spaces where people can do that?
Yeah. And then you jumped over to be a dean, correct?
Mm-hmm.
See,
Yeah.
that's a big leap because like the traditional way of thinking of a dean is a person that's in control of discipline. Like I'm in control of discipline, and when I walk in, you guys better shape up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That's a traditional view of a dean.
Yeah.
Did you take that approach at first, or what did you do when you?
I tell you what, I was scared to death. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I'm in charge of this grade level with this middle school,
Hmm.
these seventh graders. Like that's supposed to be the wildest year. Um, but I think the challenge for me was that I wanted to have the teachers feel as comfortable as they could with working with any kid. And so we had a pretty nice structure where it wasn't just about discipline. We did a lot of instructional pieces, went to classrooms, observations, data. So we had a nice structure. And so I got to work with the math department still because I
Yeah.
was in math. And so it does. They look at you like you're just in charge of, you're just going to punish me and
Yeah.
give me something bad. So you have to be intentional, like being in the hallways, talking to kids about themselves, really interacting with them during the cafeteria time, because that's the time that I was in there for an extended period of time to get to talk to kids and see them interacting with each other and have them connect, going to their doing things outside of school, but also celebrating them. I got the opportunity to run their award ceremonies
Yeah.
and do the student of the month. And so just finding ways to celebrate them as people. I still see one of those kids tried to apply for a job where I am and was
Oh
like,
wow.
hey, how are you? I want to
Yeah.
apply for a job. I look for to be a teacher. Thank you. I was like, wow, y'all remember me? But that's the kind of impact you can have if you try to be intentional and build routines where you can build relationships and not just have it be about like you said on one of your podcasts or one of your TikToks about if I just the first interaction is a negative interaction, I'm in trouble because they're not gonna want to talk or share or they're gonna be defensive and the parents are gonna be defensive.
Yeah.
So doing things like calling parents about positive stuff at the very beginning of the year when
Mhm.
nothing's really happening and everybody's behaving right, doing what they're supposed
Yeah.
to, is a great tool. Was a great tool for me for when things did happen, and I could talk to them later about it.
Yeah. And then you jumped over to be a principal, Correct, from the dean to a principal. Now that's a big jump.
Well, yeah,
There's like a great learning. The learning,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's like
I wouldn't recommend that for anybody.
no, no
Don't do
way.
that. Don't do that. But it, you know, what I learned from that is this idea of, like you said, accountability, support, and how you create routines that I really believe this. I really believe systems support people.
Yeah.
If you have the right systems in place and you can reduce the amount of frustration for adults,
Mm,
kids, parents, then they're going to trust you, and that's the kind of relationship that is going to help move things forward. Not
yeah.
that they're going to like everything that you do, because they're not there, but they're going to respect it, and they're going to understand your perspective of it and what you're trying to do, and be there to support it more so when they see you're looking at systems and trying to improve things. And so that's what I learned. When systems are there was systems that were not in place, and when they're not, it's hard to get them in
Yeah.
place. It takes months.
Yeah.
It takes months, but it was a great learning experience. I had a great mentor that was one of my assistant principals. I still talk to him today, and he and I built a great relationship, and that really, like I said, community helps, and that helps. We just built some systems that help people feel better. And by the time I left, people felt good about it. Not that I was perfect. No,
No,
mm-mm.
no way. Yeah. None of us are.
No,
Yeah.
no, but it, it was a hard learning tool. Um, but that's what I learned. People systems support people, and you be patient, and you work with them, and you talk through challenges and issues, and you be upfront about the things that are not going well, and say where I'm trying to go, and people are going to respect it, and you can move things forward.
Yeah. I found that as I move up the ladder here, I'm I try to be as honest and genuine as possible in every interaction that I have. So like
Mhm.
I don't have really a hidden agenda. It's like let me just put it out there. Like
Yeah.
I'll take a deep breath and be like, well, here's what here it is, and how are we gonna solve it? Here's the
Yeah.
situation. Here's what I think. How are we gonna solve that? Now it's not like I'm trying to hide and try to pretend like I know everything and none of that. I don't know it all. I know some things. I know about working with people. I don't know all things, and so I'm gonna be honest with you, and then we're gonna go from there. We're gonna try to figure it out together. But
Yeah.
I find myself being more genuine, more honest when I'm working through with parents or with a teacher or with like any situation. I find myself just being upfront and honest, like just saying it, like this is what it is, and not in a rude manner.
Mhm.
Just like, hey, this is just what I think. This is what it is, and if you could find a better way, great. Because we're here for the kids and we're trying to solve this problem. So like, this is what it is, and I found that that's been working for me lately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's a great practice for sure. I mean, I have lots to say about that. Like I can give one specific scenario. Like we had a big issue in the school of kids just being in the hallway, like before class. Just it was high school, and
mhm,
kids were just everywhere before after the bell rang, and it was a big pain point for the teachers and some of the kids, because
yeah,
they're like, I can't get things done. So we set up these routines where we had teachers involved in the conversation, really talked about clarity. Like you talk about rules and procedures, how do you model clarity so that they understand the rules? You can say, well, don't be late, but what does late mean? Does that mean
yeah,
I can walk in the door and I'm not late? You can see me down the hallway and I'm not late.
mhm,
I had to be in my seat, because it was different for different teachers, and that's
yeah,
confusing for kids.
absolutely,
And so how do we all get clear on what we're talking about, and then communicate to them that this is what we expect, and if you don't do that, this is the consequence, and this is what's going to happen. But we're going to talk about how to make it better and what you can do differently next time. So
and the opposite of that, I'm gonna say, is to complain about it and do nothing. to complain about it and be like, "Wow, these kids are in the hallway. Oh, they never get out. Look at this guy. I always see him always in the hallway. I always see her. They're always walking down here," and just complain about it and never come up with a system and never sit down everybody and explain the situation, but just to complain about it. And I
Hmm.
think that a lot of that goes on in different places. Let's just complain about it and not come up with a system, like you were saying, to solve this problem. And then to come up with a system, you need somebody who could, like you were saying, create clarity. Like, okay, let's sit down. I'm not here to complain. I'm just here to let's come up with a solution.
Hmm.
And that just I would hope that happens at schools. I would hope that happens. That's what I want to happen, and I
Yeah.
hope that I'm doing that. But I don't know how much that is going on. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either because there's a lot of complaining about things
There's a
that,
lot of
that happen.
complaining.
And people complain because they're frustrated, and I understand that. But I think one of the jobs that I had to learn about as move up into leadership is just like I did in the classroom. I had that space where I could create it right with students. I had that space every day, in the same time, right, same group of kids. But as a leader, you got to create that time and create that space to have those conversations where it's not like after school for hours.
Yeah.
So we just used the planning period and did like 20 minutes of your hour and a half one time. We're gonna everybody gets to share. Everybody gets a chance to kind of share their perspective. And we just used that, and then at the end celebrated the change. Like there was big change from it, and people were happy about it, and said, "You did this. You
That's
were part
good.
of it, right? You were part of the process." And so I think that's what people want. They want to share, but it has to be in a space that's a little smaller
Yeah.
than the whole faculty, because sometimes that's a little hard to do.
It's intimidating.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so then you jump into HR.
Yeah.
How, yeah, like that's different. Like HR, huh? Like how did what went on right there?
Yeah. So for me, um, I'm a little sick, like you said before. I'll say this about myself. Like I like problems. I like
Yeah.
going towards problems. I have a little problem with that. Like that's why I went from
Mhm.
dean to principal, right? So I like let me step into this issue. And so like this teacher shortage is real,
Yep.
right? It's people are fleeing the profession for reasons, personal to them, and it is a difficult profession. I'll tell you a book to read, not that you asked me, but a book that gave me some more insight about the challenges of being a teacher was The Teacher Wars,
The teacher wars. Okay.
yeah, by Dana Goldstein.
Okay.
And it just talks about the history of education and all the stuff we're going through now and where it came from and how it came to be. Um, and it's fascinating. It was fascinating to read. And so that kind of gave me some perspective on why we've had mass exodus before in education. It's not the first time.
Mm.
So I wanted to be part of the solution. I wanted to, this role came up and I wasn't even looking for it. But I'm like, I can relate to teachers. I understand different dynamics. I've been in different struggles myself personally. And I love my district and what we're trying to do. And so I can speak to what the type of people we're looking for and how we're going to support you to be successful. And so that's why I want to do it. That's why I went that way. I am not. I'm learning about the HR side of things for sure,
Yeah.
and the tracking and the policies, and HR can be like a place where you don't want to go talk to people. It's kind of like
Yeah.
these are the rules. They're going to punish you if you go there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you don't do relationships, right? I don't
Mhm.
want to go there. But I'm trying to create a space where people are welcome and know they can come to me with issues, and I'm gonna find the space for them to find the right person to talk to. Even it might be me, it might be somebody else, but I'm gonna do my best to make sure that they feel served and heard.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to do it.
And you give a lot of tips about resumes. and what to say in an interview. What can you share with us? Let's
Yeah,
start with resumes. Let's start with resumes.
yeah, yes. For resumes, and that's why I do this too, because I struggled myself through the process. It took me about 8 years to. It wasn't that quick of a jump from
Mhm.
one thing to the other. It took me a while, and so I didn't know anything about it. I didn't have any family to help me to really, because I was the first one to go to college, so nobody really could tell me. So the biggest things that I say are important are, don't just write down the tasks you did in the job. Think about the actions you took that made a difference. And so if you said, I came into this space and some of the teachers weren't getting, weren't be able to work well together. We created this planning time where I was part of it and we talked through how to work better together. That's the kind of stuff you want to put on your resume. You don't want to just say, I
Mm.
worked with a team. You
Mm.
want to say, I, the team, I work with them, but in particular, we talk through how to better work together by creating roles so that the team would function better.
Mm.
Being very, getting using more clarity in the words is important. And the second thing is aligning what you do to the job description. The job description is what they're going to ask you to do. And most people don't even, they look at it, but they don't match their resume bullets to that.
Mm.
And so I would say those are two things to do, is make sure it matches, and you don't have any extra on there because it's
Yeah.
harder to find. And then the second thing to do is make sure you put actions, things you did and what impacted it made on other people.
Yeah. And then on an interview, what kind of tips would you give somebody going on to be, they're trying to be teachers, they're going to go on these interviews? What
Yeah,
would you say?
I think it's similar. If you do your resume that way, then you're going to remember the things that you actually have accomplished,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Instead of just, so it's like storytelling. That's the way I think about it. Like, what stories really resonate with me and make me feel like I made a difference for people, and how can I just talk to other people about those stories? I
Yeah.
don't want to get technical. I want to say, hey, we had we had this team of teachers when I was a department chair. We had this team of teachers that didn't want to work together. I started having them share their own personal things each month during the meetings. And after that, they felt better about connecting with each other. They knew who to go to for certain aspects of mathematics instruction,
Yeah.
right? So you want to tell certain stories that really define who you are as a person, but you got to remember that. That's the hardest part. And you
Yeah.
don't want to remember it in the moment. You want to try to do it before you go in.
Yeah. You know, I've been on a lot of interviews. I've worked at so many different places, and every teacher interview I nail. Like if I would want to work at different school, different grade, I nail it, nail it, nail it, nail it. Even the dean job, I nailed it. Like not a problem.
Yeah.
Then when I moved up to become an admin, I didn't nail it. I didn't nail it. I went on. It was during Zoom. It was like during COVID, and it was everything was Zoom, and so it was a Zoom interview. And there's 6 questions they asked me in my first interview for the current position I have. Um, I answered it, but I'm just reading faces, and I'm like, it's not hitting right. Something's wrong. This is not like a regular teacher interview. Something's
Mhm.
wrong. I'm missing something. I am definitely missing something here. It's not like a teacher interview. So then I was like, I try to remember all the questions they gave me because I can't, like, I'm like, all right, that was a question. Okay. That was a question. I could. So then I went back and I tried at a different local district. It was same district, but different local district. And I was like, okay, let me try this one. And I got an interview again and
Mhm.
I bombed again. And I was like, man, what is going on? So I called one of my friends. He had the same position. I'm like, what happened? What is going on here? He's like, think about it like use the STAR method. I'm like, what's the STAR
Yeah.
method? What's the STAR method? He's like, situation, task, action, result. That's what you do. You tell the story. Like you were saying, tell a story. What's the situation? Here's the
Mhm.
situation. This is the task. This is what I had to do. These are the actions that I took. And based on these actions, this is the result from what my actions are. So when they ask you these questions about like anything, you say, okay, yeah, you go through it. Okay, here's the situation. This is the task that I had to perform. This is the action that I did. And this is the result of what I did.
Right.
And I went on the next interview and I already had like a variety of questions. Now I was like, okay, I got the questions. I know what they're going to ask me. I have a form of the questions. So I was ready and I got it. A situation, task, action, result. And
Yes.
I was like, oh man, that's gold. I didn't know this. I didn't know this. And so got the job. Just recently, I applied to be a principal. So this was maybe 2 months ago. Two
Mhm.
months ago, I applied to be a principal, and for me, it's a big leap. I'm a big leap to become a principal here, and I forgot about the star method. I completely forgot. So like, I'm in there. I remember I'm applying to this school, be a principal, big school. I get brought in by the director. There's two directors in there, the director, and like some other people in there, parent, and some other people. And the director hits me hard. He's like, "You go ahead and sit in the middle." So I'm sitting in the middle, and there's like a U-shaped thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, on the table, there's a paper right there with 6 questions. I flip the paper over. There's 6 questions, but then there's like 3 sub questions for each question.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, my head spinning. I'm like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? And so he's like, and each person is gonna give ask you one of the 6 questions on the paper. It's gonna go in random order, and so just be prepared. So he's like, you can review the questions really quickly. I look down and I'm like, screw it. Let's go. Let's just, first question, let's hear it. And I start to answer and I never give the result. I never give the
Mhm.
answer. Okay. They ask me a question. Okay. Yeah, this is how I do it. And this is how I did it. And I never said, and based on what I did, tardiness dropped 10% based on the
Right.
actions I took. I established this program based on the cop being good incentive program to try to catch people. Disciplinary actions dropped 20. I never gave any results.
Right.
So I'm going and I go through all of them and I'm reading faces and I'm like, okay, I'm doing like a C. I'm doing like a C in this interview. And then they give one last question. It's like, okay, just it's like an open question, like tell us who you are and what you stand for and all that. And I'm like, I could do that, no problem. So I hit that one hard, and I leave, and he walks me out. We shake hands, whatever, and he calls me later, and he's like, "Do you want any feedback?" I'm like, "Yeah, give me some feedback." And he's like, you answered okay." He goes, "But you never gave any results. You never gave any results, and because of that reason, you're gonna be on the lower end of the applicants for that job." And
Right.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So you follow the star method, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think there's important things in the interview that can help folks really practically get there. Like I can give some theory about remember your past and try to tell the story, but I think structure is important. Like
Mhm.
star method gives you a structure to help you think in the moment about how am I going to say this.
Yeah.
So that's what star for me does. And then the other thing I say, there's 2 types of people in the room. There's somebody that wants like bullet points, and there's somebody that wants a story. You
Mhm.
got both. So you
Mhm.
got to be able to, that's what star method helps you do. It helps you to make sure you keep it in a bullet format. I did this happened. I did this. This is what happened. This was the result, right? I can follow that, but also in an authentic way of here's a actual thing that happened and I worked through it. Whether
Yeah.
it went and the result doesn't have to be it was great. It could be it's something we're still working on.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to end in the best story, but it can be like it's something we're continuing to grow in. It's something that I'm still looking back at and seeing how we can do a little bit differently. So those are things that are practical that people can really latch on to.
Yeah, and this was a hard lesson I had to learn. I 1, 2, like it was rough. It was rough, man. I had a hard time. Uh, at the same time, I was excited that I actually got an interview, and I went on the interview. I went through it. And I did it. I was
Yeah.
excited about that. I was excited, and then I was relieved that I did not get the job.
It was good practice, right? Good interview
It was
practice.
practice. It was practice. I was like, oh, thank God, man, because I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready. So,
Yeah, but I think that's true about everything, right? For you don't be afraid to avoid things like that. It's an opportunity for you to learn what you can do because that's where you want to go eventually, right? So now you understand what the environment might be and how to prepare for it better. So I think every opportunity is opportunity to grow, and
mm,
even if you don't get the job, it's the hard part is not beating yourself up. It's really saying, what did I learn from that? How can I use that to be better next time?
yeah. You know, you made this one post, and we're going to come toward the end here, but you made this one post, and it was about as you move up the ladder, you get less support. You get less support as you move up the ladder. And man, that is so true. As you move up, you get less support, and you're accountable for way more things like you know. And so, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah,
So you put that post out.
yeah.
Explain that a little bit.
It was life. It was life
Yeah.
in my experience going through the things. Like even as you get to a district level, you get less and less. Right? People don't see what you're doing every day, and so they don't really know how to support you. But I think I think I think accountability is important. And as you go up the ladder, understanding that I'm going to be accountable for more things, whether it's people, programs, more of the community. I'm going to be responsible for that. And I have to own that responsibility without, and knowing that people are not going to always agree with me.
Mm,
They're not going to support every decision I make. And so I think as you go up the ladder, I'm still learning how to do this. I'm not perfect at it at all. But I learn every day. I have to remind myself, how did I support myself today?
hmm.
How did I um, make sure that I saw some progress in what I was doing, whether it's creating a system that helps or communicating to people what I need or really advocating for something I think is better for teachers coming into our community, like housing is something important. Like how can I
Yeah.
help support them to want to come here because we're going to support them in housing. And that's not financially something people want to do, right?
Hmm.
And so it's about continuously kind of knowing where you're going, being accountable for that, and being okay with the 1% growth that you're making every single day,
Yeah.
um, and using that to support yourself because you're not outside, you're not going to get a lot of that. And to expect that is where I think frustration comes in as leaders. They're like, well, they're not supporting me and they should be, backing with my ideas. No, nobody has to do that.
Hmm.
You have to believe in what you're doing and find the right supports to help you get there so other people can see it as a possibility.
Yeah, it's like making the way. You have to make the way. You have to make the way, and you have to help other people see that there is a way that could be made, and if we all work together, we could get this thing done.
Right.
That's the key, and it has to be. You have to build those relationships. I was talking to somebody today, and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Vergara, you're doing a good job here, and you just came in here a couple weeks." And I was like, thank you. I go, my whole goal, like, I just, yeah, I'm the assistant principal, but really, I nobody's gonna follow me if I treat them poorly. Like
Correct.
nobody's gonna follow me if I'm mean and trying to control everybody. Who's gonna follow that? I go, my goal is just like, hey, we're in this together. We're working at one same goal to make these special education classrooms the best we possibly can make them. And so that's the
Yeah.
whole goal. And I'm just here to support you guys as much as I possibly can. You guys need something, I'm going to try my best to get it for you guys. And, it's true. Like what you're saying is like, as you move up, like nobody supports, and I'm not looking for support really. I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm trying to support other people. I'm not advocating like, please support me.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
but like, as you move up, really, it's like, okay, it's on you. Like you are the support for these people. You are support for this program. You're support for these 5 teachers, these 16 sped aides, all the kids in these programs, special education program. You're supporting all of that.
That's right.
And whatever resources you have behind you, you're going to use those resources in a creative, clever way to try to get more personnel. You're going to build that relationship with your specialist
Correct.
so that when you have to call her, you're like, hey, I need another person. Like, look at the numbers again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need another person.
That's
You're
right.
going to build relationships with other people in your same position, because if you don't know how to figure something out, you could call those other people and be like, hey, I'm in this situation, right? How did you deal with something like this? And you get support laterally like that, And so you're clever, you're creative, and you're trying to find creative ways, but nobody's really saying, let me help you. Nobody ever says, let me help. It's like, okay, I'm seeking out this person. I got to go get this. I got to get
Hmm.
this done. And it's a lonely place. It could be a lonely place, and it's fine. The leadership can be lonely. Leadership is lonely, right? The further you get to the top, is the lonelier it gets, I guess. And it's about supporting the team,
That,
being accountable. Yeah.
that's right. But the last thing you said, I think, is important is you're serving others. And so that is the support you need to see their joy, to see that they
Yeah.
are being successful, to see that they can accomplish the goal that we all set out to accomplish and that it is possible. That is the support for me anyway. That's the relationship, helping them navigate through the challenges of it. And that's what the power of relationships will do if you build the right systems and keeps trusting that people will figure it out along the way.
Yeah. Awesome. Before we go, do you have any tips for people that are applying to become a teacher?
For come to my school. No, that's the tip. No, but the tip is just try to find a community that's going to help you learn more about being a teacher. Two is really remember why you started doing this in the first place. And three, um, just focus on the little things that you were able to do and accomplish with, in whatever field that what is working with a small group of kids or whatever. Just talk about those experiences and how they made you feel and how you've helped others. And I think that will help you get in the door because education is a people business and you want to make people be more successful than they are today. And as long as you're sharing that, then you're gonna be a great educator and you continue to remember that you're gonna do great for kids in the community.
Well, Ray, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom. I greatly appreciate it. We had some moments where we're talking philosophical, like simple things that were taught to us at Sunday school or something. Our moms taught us, our dads taught us, or somebody taught us that a long time ago. And it's just remembering the simple things that make this world go around, right? So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. You're great at what you do. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.